Hello, thank you. I'm Andy Hofleitner, and I would like to tell you a story about Afghanistan and a story about a device called the PROX1. But let's start with Afghanistan. In 2014, I deployed to Afghanistan as elite counter and human intelligence specialist for Special Operations Task Force Southeast. That's an area encompassing 100 square miles, 12 US bases, and approximately 1,000 US personnel, along with a number of local nationals, allies. Now, my job as the commanding officer for SEAL Team 8 put it to me before we deployed is, Hoff, make sure that our local nationals don't shoot us in the back. Now, what he was referring to is our local national allies and something that we call a green on blue attack. What he didn't tell me was, Hoff, make sure that our local national allies don't steal our classified computers. But that is exactly what happened. See, in 2014 we were retrograding our bases in preparation for withdrawal from Afghanistan. And during one of those retrograde operations, one of our classified computers went missing. And 2 weeks later, we got a communication intercept that indicated to us that that laptop, it was already in Pakistan. Whoever stole it was trying to contact the Pakistani intelligence to try and sell it and the data on it to them. Pakistan was outside our authorized operational area. It would have taken an act of the President of the United States for us to be allowed to go into Pakistan, so we were never going to really get that laptop back. How nice would it have been if that laptop had been equipped with PROX1, a fully autonomous self-destruction device that can be installed on sensitive electronic components to ensure their destruction under predetermined operational conditions. PROX1 is made up of 4 primary features. First, a rocket case housing that is home to all the internal modules and sensitive components that it needs to protect. And inside that housing is a layer of explosives that allows for rapid destruction of all the sensitive components inside via a contained explosion. And all of that is controlled by an embedded AI system that is complete with internal sensors, but also takes information from external ones, that constantly monitors the environment and triggers a self-destruction under predetermined operational conditions. There's also the option for the installation of an electronic decoy component. How would PROX1 have helped us in this Afghanistan scenario? Well, as soon as the laptop entered Pakistan, the internal GPS would have recognized that it is no longer in Afghanistan. That information would have been passed to the artificial intelligence, which would have said, aha, hold on, I'm outside my authorized area. Let me make a note of that, and it would have raised the flag. Next, the power supply would have recognized that it dropped below 5% once the computer had no longer been plugged into external power. Again, the AI would have said, hold on, my predetermined operational parameters said I should never fall below 5% power. Let me raise a second flag. And finally, once somebody attempted to remove the hard drive, it would have been recognized by the hardware monitor. And again, the AI would have said, hold on, that is against one of my pre-programmed operational requirements. It would have raised a third flag. Now, any of those events happening independently would not have any effect, but all 3 of them combined now meet our predetermined operational requirements for self-destruct that I, as the user, pre-programmed my laptop for before deployment, and the AI gives the command for self-destruct, destroying the disk and all of this classified information on it, but leaving the thief unharmed. So the heart of all of this is really the artificial intelligence of PROX1. It takes information from internal and external sensors, constantly monitors it to paint a picture of the environment, and then compares that to the parameters that you as a user have set for self-destruct. When the AI decides that the self-destruct parameters have been met, it sends a signal to the charge, ignites the explosives, destroying the processor above it and the hard drive below it completely, but only partially damaging the decoy hard drive. And that is so that the perpetrator can try and remove information from the decoy hard drive, but instead of actually removing classified information, they're either removing false information we implanted or Trojans and zero-day exploits, which then allow us to access the perpetrator's network. So why do we use kinetics? Why don't we use a wipe procedure? There are a couple of inherent problems with a wipe procedure. The first being that a wipe procedure does not actually delete information, it scrambles it, and it takes a while. Each wipe takes a certain amount of time depending on how much data you're trying to scramble. For that to be successful, you have to do a number of iteration of wipes. But even if you do 1,000 wipes, there's still a possibility that somebody with advanced technology can at least retrieve some of that information. And someone who has no access to advanced technology is at least going to be able to access your wipe logs, because the system that conducts the wipes cannot wipe itself. The other problem with the wipe is that if the hard drive is damaged, the wipe may not execute properly, or it may not actually wipe all of the files. You may have also heard of a glass chip that can be destroyed by shining a laser onto it. Now the problem with the glass chip is that, again, if the glass chip becomes damaged, such as maybe through an impact, it might crack, and you run into the same problems of the data only being partially destroyed. It could also be that the impact misaligns the chip and the laser, rendering the whole system inert. With explosives, you have a cheap and you have a reliable method that has been tested. Explosives expertise already exists in the military and has for a long time. Explosives have a lot of different suppliers, so buyer power is pretty high. It allows you for the installation of a decoy component, and if the system is dropped, or even if it goes through extreme conditions such as heat, it won't be affected. You can throw C4 into a fire, it will not explode unless the primer is actually ignited. Okay, so explosives seem to be the best way to go, but isn't that pretty dangerous? Well, let me remind you first that we're talking about a very small amount of explosives. Just about the same amount that is in your airbag in your car right now. In addition, those explosives are inside a housing that is designed to contain the explosion. Again, your airbag contains explosives, but it is designed to save your life, not harm you. If the system is poorly designed, such as the Kata airbags are in some of our vehicles, it will not do its job properly and it might actually harm you. And that is the case with a lot of everyday items that we use. If they're improperly used or if they're improperly designed, they can be very dangerous, but it doesn't change the fact that we still use them every day because they make our lives easier, safer, or just generally better. Okay, fair enough. So explosives are safe to use, they're the best way to use them, but in what other situations could have PROX1 been used in the past? Let me walk you through 6 very briefly. In 2001, the US lost the P-3 Orion, which is one of our spy planes would fly along the coast of China, when the Chinese Air Force forced the P-3 to land. The crew on board had to use a pickaxe to destroy the classified information systems on board, while the pilot was trying to stall the landing until they were complete. In 2011, during the Osama bin Laden raid, we lost one of our new stealth helicopters when it crashed in the compound. The Special Operations Forces on that mission had to throw 2 incendiary grenades into the helicopter and hope that it would burn down completely. Due to the speed of the operation and the fact that they had to leave quickly, they couldn't stick around to make sure all of the sensitive components were actually destroyed. That same year, the CIA lost a new, one of the most secret spy drones to Iran. Now, Iran claims that because this spy drone was still controlled by an operator, it was sending a signal to a satellite and then to a ground station. And Iran claims it was able to jam that signal, causing the operator to lose control. And then when the drone was searching for a signal, Iran was able to spoof it and take control of the plane and land it in Iran. In 2015, we lost a Predator drone in Syria. And some of those components have apparently been collected, at least partially intact, by Syrian opposition forces, but we don't know what happened to those components or the information on them subsequent to that. In 2016, the Iranians, again, captured a US naval patrol boat off the coast of Iran when it drifted into Iranian waters. And as the Iranians were approaching the boat with their machine guns pointed at the Navy sailors, telling them to get on the ground and put their hands over their head, one of the U.S. Navy sailors, the only female on board, had the guts to defy their orders, take an incendiary grenade, put it onto the communications equipment, and let it burn through. Had she not had the guts to do that, or had she been shot before she could, the Iranians would now be in charge of our encrypted communications equipment. Also in 2016, the Chinese pulled an underwater submersible, an autonomous vehicle, out of the water before the U.S. ship that put it there could retrieve it. Now, what are these underwater vehicles used for? Well, the Navy primarily uses them to chart the ocean floor, but also to look for submarines. Now the Chinese are in possession of all that information. So when we talk about military applications, PROX1 would best be used in high-value assets that either operate autonomously or with limited user input, such as unmanned aerial vehicles or unmanned underwater vehicles. But it might also be well suited for something like a radio that contains encrypted communication chips that we do not want to get into enemy hands, but is a device that could easily be lost. When we talk about commercial use cases, there is currently a growing $20 to $500 billion industry, depending on whose sources you want to take, that is trying to prevent industrial espionage. Now, the same laptop that we lost in Afghanistan full of classified information could just as well have been a laptop that was stolen out of the car in the parking lot out front, full of proprietary business information. And in those commercial applications, PROX1 would be well suited to protect information inside suitcases, safes, laptops, computers, servers, and once we're able to miniaturize it, also in phones and thumb drives. Now, the technology as it is currently, it's made up of two parts. There's the hardware and the software. And currently the hardware is at TRL level 2 to 3, with most of the concept being finished, but not all parts having been fully tested yet. And the software is at TRL 3 to 4, with the concept being completely finished and some of the components working together well in a prototype environment. Now I'm going to pose a question to you. Can PROX1 repeat the success story of the MRAP, the mine-resistant armored personnel vehicle? Let me tell you about the MRAP. In 2003, we went into Iraq with thin-skinned Humvees. Now, we lost a lot of people because bullets ripped right through those doors. By 2004, 2005, we'd been largely equipped with up-armored Humvees, which stopped bullets, but they did not stop an explosion such as an IED, an improvised explosive device that insurgents will place on the side of the road and then ignite when a convoy of US troops drives by. In this picture, you see what a Humvee looks like after it's been hit by an IED. In 2002, a year before the war, BAE, the premier military contractor in the UK, was on the verge of bankruptcy and had to be bailed out by the UK government. However, it saw what was happening in Iraq and Afghanistan in 2003, 2004, and said, I think there is a business there in the future, and there's going to be a need for an up-armored vehicle that can resist these IEDs, because the US is not going to allow this to happen much longer. So they took $10 billion and invested it in their least profitable branch. Remember, this is right after they've been bailed out. That least profitable branch is their armored vehicle branch, the armored personnel carrier branch. And that single branch in their company took them from almost bankrupt to being the second largest defense contractor in the world, right behind General Dynamics, within a 3-year time span. How did they do that? Well, because they had a vision of the future, they were able to develop a prototype ahead of its need. So when the Marine Corps asked to test a prototype of an MRAP in 2007, BAE was the first to be able to provide one. Not only is that significant, but 2007 was also when Congress in the United States issued an emergency defense budget for the production of a vehicle that can resist IEDs, because politicians could just no longer afford the political fallout from all the soldiers that were killed due to IEDs, because there was no vehicle available to protect them. So a month after the Marine Corps tested the first prototype, it put an order of $67 million in for more. A couple months later, another order for $480 million, and only 5 months after testing the first one, an order for $600 million. By the end of the year, when the emergency budget expired, the United States had spent $50 billion to put an order in for 27,000 mine-resistant armored personnel carriers. Why is that important? What I'm trying to point out is that we have a vision of the future for PROX1, but when that vision comes to reality, we need to be ready with a prototype, because when the funding comes available to protect our classified information, because we can no longer afford not to protect it, we want to be able to go to a defense contractor such as BAE, Boeing, General Dynamics, and say, hey, we have a solution to your problem and we have a working prototype that will allow you to take advantage of this opportunity. What is that vision? Well, currently, the Pentagon is spending $3 billion a year on autonomous systems. We think that as the use of autonomous systems increases, as we're going away from systems that are controlled by users either behind a joystick or inside the system, we're going to lose more. The more autonomous systems we put into the field, the more we're going to lose. And most of those systems are going to be used for intelligence gathering activities. And they're going to have a lot of very sensitive data on them that we do not want to fall into enemy hands. Now, why do I say that? Can't they just simply collect the data and send it off to a satellite and not store it on their equipment? No, they can't, because we are trying to access A2AD environments, and we're increasingly trying to do so. Those are anti-access area denial environments. In order to be able to access those environments, you have to be completely stealthy. And nothing is completely stealthy. It is still sending or receiving signals of any kind. Any system that is to collect information and be completely undetectable has to fundamentally be able to take off autonomously, collect that information autonomously, store it on board safely, return from its mission autonomously, and then the information is retrieved. Furthermore, we're now going to an area where we've been putting a lot of research and money into drone technology. Now, drones are designed swarm technology, and that swarms are designed fundamentally so that if one drone falls out of the swarm, the rest can continue on their mission as if it were just one. However, even one drone in that swarm, every single one has a chip in it, and that chip contains information that specifically would allow an adversary to gain information on how those drones operate with each other in the swarm, and therefore allow them a way to counter it. So PROX1 would be perfectly suited to mitigate that risk, both in high-value intelligence collection assets and in swarm technology. So, can PROX1 be the new MRAP story? There's 3 things that you have to fundamentally believe if you want to believe that PROX1 can recreate the success of the MRAP. First, you have to believe that the autonomous future is the autonomous future in the U.S. military is going to be where we're headed. Second, you have to believe that the United States government is fundamentally interested in protecting its classified information, data, and technology from adversaries, and is willing to pay for that. And thirdly, you have to believe that this vision of the future arrives within the next 15 years before our patent runs out. Now, I believe all 3 of those things, and that's why I'm here today. And I also believe that PROX1's team can provide the solution for you. Now, thank you for your time.